Can you believe that Universal's classic monsters have captivated audiences for nearly a century? These iconic figures have not only shaped the horror genre, but have also left an indelible mark on pop culture. Their stories and portrayals resonate through generations, illustrating the evolution of horror cinema from silent beginnings to the modern interpretations. The roots of Universal's classic monsters can be traced back to the silent film era, with The Phantom of the Opera in 1925. This would be directed by Rupert Julian and starred the legendary Lon Chaney. It would set a precedent for horror films. Chaney's portrayal of the disfigured Phantom showcased groundbreaking makeup and a performance technique that was unseen before. This would influence future filmmakers in the horror genre, and this film laid the groundwork for what a horror film should be and emphasized the psychological aspects of fear and tragedy. Though Phantom was a great starting point, the real turning point for the horror franchise came with the release of Dracula in the 1930s. Directed by Todd Browning and starred Bela Lugosi, this adaptation of Bram Stoker's classic novel became a cultural phenomenon. Count Dracula defined what a character in the horror genre should be. With his distinct accent and commanding presence, it created a lasting image in the minds of fans everywhere. Following the success of Dracula, Universal continued to explore classic literature with Frankenstein, directed by James Whale. This starred Boris Karloff as the monster and is often hailed as one of the greatest horror films ever made. The film presented a tragic interpretation of Frankenstein's monster, emphasizing themes of creation, abandonment, and the quest for acceptance. The collaboration between Whale and Karloff resulted in a deeply emotional portrayal that resonated with audiences, establishing a template for what a monster should be when creating a narrative. In 1932, The Mummy would be introduced to audiences. Played by Karloff once again, this film combined elements of horror with adventure and romance, demonstrating Universal's ability to adapt to various genres within the horror genre and utilize different literary sources to create compelling cinema. This would also lead to the creation of The Invisible Man in 1933, which would be based off the H.G. Wells novel and showcase innovative special effects that brought to life a unique character that was never seen before. The horror genre gained even more traction come the 1940s. Universal introduced a number of new storylines and new characters. The Wolfman would make his debut in 1941 and became a fantastic hit of werewolf mythology. The film introduced the idea of a curse and tragic struggle for a character, solidifying an emotional depth of a monster narrative. During this decade, Universal also produced sequels and crossover films for their beloved Universal monsters. The 1950s would not only mark a significant expansion in the Universal monster lineup, it would also mark the decade where movies came alive. The movies no longer became a thing for just the wealthy to go do. It became a typical date night thing for kids, teenagers, and adults to go see. Movies at this time became more and more popular with unique special effects and larger budgets. The Creature from the Black Lagoon would make its debut in 1954, which introduced Gillman, a creature that embodied the fears of humanity's relationship with nature. This film became a cult classic and emphasized the blend of horror and science fiction to characterize an era. In this period as well, Universal also produced an ensemble of films like House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula to bring together multiple monsters in a shared narrative. It was during the late 40s and 50s where Universal truly built their monster universe. They would make connections with several other films, bringing together their characters to develop and create unique narratives that would gather attention from audiences all over. The 1960s and 70s would showcase a new revival of unique monsters and unique techniques in the movie industry. The Universal Classic Monsters continued to grow in popularity and in pop culture. Notable adaptations of other novels as well as other movies would continue on during this time period. It would also extend into the world of television, where the horror genre would start to develop more and more. However, it would be in the mid 70s where we would see a dip in the Universal dominance with their classic monsters. Instead, we would see the rise in true horror movies, where we would see the introduction of new characters like Michael Myers, Jason, and Freddy Krueger. This didn't mean that the characters of classic Universal were dead. In fact, it meant that Universal had to rethink their movie process and how to gravitate new audiences to go see their movies. It was during this time period that we would see movies like The Mummy, a classic film with Brendan Fraser, which is now a cult classic and fan favorite, and has been utilized in the Universal theme parks around the world. This was dubbed as the new beginning for the Dark Universe and had hopes to expand further. However, that would not happen, and instead they would try to reboot the Dark Universe once again with The Mummy in 2017, which starred Tom Cruise. However, despite high expectations, it would be a failure. In reality, the only true classic Universal Monsters film that has had success in the past 20 years has been those Brendan Fraser mummy movies that revitalize the character. But that doesn't mean Universal has given up on their favorite classic monsters. They've even extended them into the theme parks around the world with various attractions, meet and greets, and oftentimes being highlighted at Universal's Halloween Horror Nights. But more recently, we finally got a first look of the new Dark Universe at Epic Universe in Orlando. This looks to be an incredible experience showcasing the classic monsters and bringing to life the actual Dark Universe. With brand new rides, attractions, and shows coming to this land, the expectation is very high that Universal will go all out. But on top of that, fans everywhere are hoping that the theme park experience will transcend the characters into bigger and better things. The hope is that the characters will come to life once more on the big screen and on television. There's hopes everywhere that this theme park, that this land, that these attractions will bring to life the Dark Universe that everybody has wanted for years. Let us know in the comments below if you're excited for the new land coming to Epic Universe or what your favorite classic Universal monster has been. As always, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate all of you. And happy Halloween. It's going to be an interesting next few years for Universal. Believable truths.